I thank Ashley. I've been bothering him from last evening because I was asking him, I'm not really that familiar with the Google platform because we are in college using the Zoom platform. So I have bothered him. Thank you, Ashley, for all the support.
Always. Thank you.
Right. So now let's get started. And I was just taking a background about what you all come from and what is your, idea, etc. would really happen or form if you come from a discipline and then you try tracing the roots of the discipline. When this topic was suggested, or we were discussing whether we needed to talk about this topic, a few things that came to my mind was truly, it's been so many years that even I'm into this discipline, and sometimes we've never even felt that we should trace its journey from where it started. And it's interesting. It's interesting to me, of course, because I'm into the subject of geography, and maybe even to Ashley sir because he's into geography. But for most of you, you will be venturing into a discipline which is about geography or into geography. So as you're going to be doing masters in first year, or for that matter, you'll be going to be doing, in geoinformatics, in whatever form you are studying, do understand one thing before we take this forward, and that is just love what you want to do. I mean, I've taken up this subject, if you ask me, not because this was going to escalate into a job for me or it's going to escalate into anything else. It is largely because I would love this earth in which I was born. And loving this earth would mean the geo word got taken care of for me. But for you all, of course, you'll have your different reasons for coming to this discipline. It is pretty much a discipline which is continuously changing, and that is the tracing which we will try to find. If you find my level of talk getting a little higher, do not worry. You can put it into the chat box. I hope I'm going to be able to access that, or I think you can unmute. I'm not sure what the proceedings are. In case you can unmute, then very good. At the end, I'll give you a break maybe after an hour and we'll take in a discussion there. And about 6-ish, we'll take a discussion. And then again, around 7 before we close, we'll have a quick discussion and your feedback as to what do you feel and where do you find geography today. So I hope this journey helps you identify your purpose into the subject. And I hope we are able to trace some roots for you. Why did the word geo come in into your entire domain that you are picking up? I'm getting a static sound. I hope you're not getting it. Yeah. So to begin with, when I look at my emergence into this particular discipline, one thing that I always identified in the past was that I was free of history. There was nothing historical in this subject, and so I took it up. If anybody told me, "Oh God, Mughals, oh God, this, I've got to study this, I've got to study that," because of the orientation that came to us that yeah, history was going to be very tough and got to memorize a lot of it. And then as time passed, and as you get into a subject, as you start tracing roots of a subject, it's at that time you realize that the subject cannot be understood unless you understand where we began from, right? So perhaps that's where we shall commence. 1 minute, the screen, yeah. This is my plan of the session. I'll just try to look at what is geography. I'll just try to do a little routing of geography. The journey has to be given to you. We look at maps as an expression because that's our expression as a geography discipline. A little look at the geographical paradigm. A term may be looking like a little tough to you, but as we come to it, you'll understand. And of course, what is this concept of geoinformatics? I was glancing through different images and I came across these two images, which are clearly the only two ones which are found in British Museum, which show Indians having storytelling session, right? And why not, right? All of us grew up with somebody telling us a beautiful story, and we sat down and we listened in awe. Okay, Patani, yes, okay, fine. Whether it was a mythological character, or it was maybe a science fiction character, or it was anybody else, you actually always listen to stories. You don't want to listen to facts. So if I told you the story of a coronavirus, through a person's journey into coronavirus, you will receive it better than telling you on this day he had this much temperature and this much thing and this much thing, and then he took this medicine. You're not going to listen to that. So sometimes facts can be understood better when you are looking at it from the version of stories. I'm not saying geography is stories. I'm only saying that I'm trying to create it such that you should be able to appreciate that there has been a history to the subject and we need to appreciate that. And I found this beautiful, beautiful write up, which I therefore picked up for you, which says that the history of geography should have or involves several stories. To give you an example, now you would say, why are we even talking stories, right? I don't want to tell you about who is this and who is that and why are we appreciating that particular factor. I was just seeing the newspaper some time back because from the morning I had lectures and now I got some time to see the newspaper. One of the key thing is that two star brothers have escaped the corona's isolation, and that's become the news. Now, not those kind of stories. That's not geographical stories. So let me just give you one run through a quick of in about a minute. Um, it's been a time and a while that people keep talking good and bad things about Hindus. I'm not going into any religious aspects whatsoever. But do you really know why is it that we are called Hindus? We are called Hindus largely because of some Greek people who came all the way to India and they found the river Indus. And they would actually, the terminology for Indus was Yondu or Sindhu in the local areas. So all that they did was they said, okay, there are people who are living on the other side of Sindhu. And so let's call them Yondus or Sindhus, which got deviated eventually by Arabs when they came in. And they found that, okay, fine, this is Hind. So this is Hindus. So people living eastern side of the Indus River. I hope you know where River Indus is. Indus River, which is one of the, I mean, very beautiful rivers. It's flowing on the western side of our country. Though not a lot of it is in our country. You have the Indus River, which rises in Mansarovar. It passes through India. There are 5 tributaries in our country, and the Sapta Sindhu, sometimes some people call it. The 5 tributaries, the Doab region for us in geographers or geographical terms, and then it passes through the Pilibhit Pass and it goes in into Pakistan in the POK region. So actually, a lot of it goes outside. But then, technically speaking, the region east of that, we were called the Hindus. So there was no division of, this is a religious connotation. And see how history has evolved. Way, way later, when the Europeans came to trade here, they tried to segregate between the inhabitants here and they classified us as Hindus. So, see how nomenclatures have changed, see how our evolution has changed, the way we are referred to has changed, and that's a story. So, let's go ahead with how we began. Geography as a discipline is very old. It's old because we started living here. But then when we started living here on this planet, and we realized that there's a lot of a surrounding around us which we needed to know. Man is very curious, and man needed a little bit more information than what he was getting. So, what is it that he tried to do? He tried to map, describe, put together an entire plethora of information, and that is exactly what we call as geography. So, geo and graphy, right? That's the part. So we took a part of the earth, we took a part of its description, and much later this description started changing, and we started incorporating even things which were just not physical descriptions but were also used as a cartographic descriptions. And that is where mapping comes in, and that is exactly where we are, you know, pulling this entire the discipline forward, because we have to also ensure that the discipline becomes or stays relevant. Talking about the background and the history, it said that there were a huge volume, around 2,500 material that was manuscripts that was written about how the Greeks visualized the earth at that time and the area around them, the description of the places around them, and a lot of these manuscripts were lost in a great library fire that had happened. However, whatever was left back from there and whatever could be traced in other places, other cities outside of where the fire was there, was actually brought together, and the Greek contribution was actually enumerated. Because as we'll take this forward, you will see how significantly they have contributed. So coming to another person, now this person, for people, most of you getting into mapping, and because a lot of geoinformatics will rely on understanding the maps. And so when you talk about these maps, the man which we go back to is Ptolemy. Ptolemy, in so early as second century, was actually talking about representation. He was talking about identification of features. He was talking about the earth. He was talking about whatever kind of phenomena you can describe on this earth. Now, when I say features, it could be a mountain. When I say a feature, it could be a plateau, a plain, a river, anything like that is a mountain. When you talk mountains also, please do understand that globally mountains have predated man. So there have been mountains before us. So all that we needed to do was to identify which was a good mountain for us and a bad mountain for us. Why were we studying that mountain? What is the significance of the mountain? Is it of any use to us? Will it help us in some way? Those are the kind of things that we had to identify. For example, if you look at the Himalayas, I think all of us have gone through this, that Himalayas is quite a lot of beneficial to the Indian subcontinent, more as a climatological significance as well as a protection from even entry of people from the northern parts of Asia. So technically speaking, a mountain can be of a lot of a use to you. Also, there are many other significance which we will be talking about even in geography when we come to the subjects in our classes. So guiding or putting through the direction for geography, one of the main stalwarts that we are looking at here is Ptolemy because of his contribution to mapping. There are many more, but what we need to focus here is more to the subject and the needs of this subject. Now, looking towards some facts which have played a key role in our subject, and in my life, I've met several geographers. There are many I could never meet. A lot of people who have contributed to the subject perhaps would have done so in a more non-noticeable manner and created a volume of research which later on came to be used and later on was documented, was put together, a discipline was created, and then you mapped how you want to take the discipline forward. All that happened gradually. But what is extremely important is, why did we start looking differently at the world? Years back, I had met a geographer who was studying the maps of the world. And she was, while taking a session for us, she used to be my guide for certain time when I was doing a particular research program. And she had told us that the way you are looking at the world today is more or less the way Europe looked at the world. So if Europeans stayed in Europe, they blew up the drawings and the maps of Europe. And it sounded strange to us, and we were all willing to, tell her, no, no, cannot be possible. The world looks the same. Even if you take it from the skies, it looks the same. But she always kept on telling us this. And I think it has been proved a little bit much later down as people are getting more quantifiable data to prove that. But what really happened is that Africa, as it is drawn in most older maps, is smaller, whereas Europe is a smaller continent but has been blown up much larger. And that's how people perceive areas around that. If we were in a physical class, I would have made you do this mapping, but right now it's really not possible. So someday we should sit down and do that. So it's like mapping things around you, and that map really clearly tells you how you perceive things in or around wherever you are. Now, I'm also introducing Greek interpretations. We're going to go into a little more detail because that's a massive contribution that we see in the subject and its evolution, which will be in the subsequently one or two slides that we will take. let me talk to you about a little about the seafaring Celts. Who are the Celts? The Celtic people were the people who were around the English Channel and around the Atlantic, the North Atlantic region. So it's the region where you see the Scandinavian as well as you will see the English areas as well as the Scottish areas. Now, this was the region which was very severe, very cold, and the professions in these areas, these are not the Celtic people, so the Celtics and the Anglo-Saxons were the two broad originating people in the past in European history. So the two people, or maybe the Celts really, they took to the sea. And they once they took to the sea, they started venturing out to see what was beyond in the waters. And they could come back to give the first inputs to people who were living in the land. Right, they came back to say कि sea ends here, इसके बाद sea नहीं है, इसके बाद there is going to be another continent, some land of some sort there. Or they would come back to say that the sea in this part gets very rough. They could come back to tell you that the sea in this part is going to be very foggy. Why? Because they had ventured out beyond their lands. And that was the first step for mankind, because man was very, very wary of what is exactly happening in the deep seas. So the Celts were not scared of the sea, and that's why the entire region there becomes a seafaring tradition. That's important to us geographically as well as an input to the entire evolution of the discipline. Next comes an age of exploration. I think I don't have to introduce this to you. You've seen Vasco da Gama coming here, but he was not the only man. There have been Columbus, there have been Magellan, there have been so many people who went all over trying to go and find new lands. Very important period, very, very important period, largely because this is the period where new lands were found. Your United States of America may say many things and may not like people who come in from outside, but actually United States of America also, as we call it as North America, also had indigenous people who were the Red Indians. And the rest of the people, whoever you see there, they are all migrants. But they've migrated way, way back. And so obviously you do not understand how or who's different and who is not. But their names, their lineages will tell you that this person's come from Italy, this person would have come from France, etc. Similarly, if you see even in Australia, it's the same thing there. You see the same thing in many parts of the world. So the emergence of people moving out one after the other as these explorations took place. Initially, people thought that they're not going to come back. Remember, we were always believing that the earth is a flat place. We would reach that end of the world and we're going to crash and fall off, but it never happened. So we realized it was a circular earth, and when it was a circular earth, you could go somewhere and you could come back. As we talk about this, I think interestingly, we should also talk about Vasco da Gama and his entry into India, bringing in the Portuguese and Portuguese culture to the western coast of India, more precisely today as it is left back in Goa and, of course, in certain other small union territories that are in that region. However, most dominantly, if I was tracing a map, I would find the Portuguese map, which will be a very old map of India. So, age of exploration, contribution was knowing new lands, understanding what is there, understanding what is not there. It is said that every time these explorers came in, they would actually have a scientific person, a person documenting things, writing down things, and taking it back. And that was thereafter shared and discussed at whatever platforms existed in that world from where he had come. So if a person went back to Alexandria, people would talk about it in Alexandria. If people went back to, let us say, any other place, it would again be a discussion on that. So the old world was trying to assimilate information and draw what became very important for the world, the maps, right? So that is the emergence of your or maybe inputs coming in or the descriptions that came in from the whole world. So never, never, never look down upon these explorations. As we talk about this, to also understand that when you're even trying to map India, there have been many people who came to India, they studied India, they went back and reported to their respective kings and emperors, etc. That is what came in, or that is exactly what was fueled or added to understand about India. So it's a kind of a common thing. One takeaway is Indica as a term, I'm sure you know, is also a book that was written on India. So, technically speaking, exploration, very critical, very important, helped us to understand what we did not know. Next comes another thing, and that is new geography. Now, what is this new geography? Around 17th, 18th, 19th, these were the times when inputs into the subject increased. And as we were increasing, as we take this session forward, you will see there'll be a slide where I've put down some topics for you. Those are the kind of new topics which emerged. And we had to understand those topics. Those topics made a contribution to the subject, making the subject very vast. So initially, what began as only describing what they saw, it became describing what they did not see, others saw, and added it in. Gradually, to that, we added more things. So if somebody studied climates, we added that. If somebody studied the vegetation profile, we added that. And that's how the subject grew. That's how analysis rose. And that's where we are today, a modern branch, very apt, very dynamic, and of course, extremely, extremely potential in the future. That I included in the next one as well is that all branches started forming and including. We'll discuss the branches in more detail in a while. Another phase which happened for us in geography much before we took to identifying in all the tech-based tools into geography was something called the quantitative revolution in geography. This was the time when a section of people, starting with Burton, they wanted that geography is only description. Let's start putting numbers to it. So you are telling me that this mountain is very tall. How tall? Do you know how tall that mountain is? No, so you've got to measure it, right? So begin that. But however, it was not generally on physical geography as it was more towards quantifying and using a big chunk of statistical techniques and tools in geography. The whole discipline of geography broke up then. Some people did not want it, some people wanted it. People who did not want it, of course, did not want it. Some people who wanted it went on shouting, 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 and for 2 or 3 decades this went on. So, quantitative revolution was the first time geographers faced a change in their thoughts. And of course, later on, the geoinformatics will set in. So, quantitative revolution, we'll do this in a little longer way also in a bit. Mapping as a tool was important because we had to learn to put down what we saw, and finally was the geographically using all kinds of technology that was available. Was that going to be good or bad? We don't know, because even now we are continuously adapting, and it has become so precise and so good that geoinformatics is the place to be right now in. So coming back to our a little boring part, just to let you know that when I was taught this part in my life, we used to tell our professor, we were in Calcutta University, we used to tell him that Sarak to Joldi code means just do it a little faster, it's too boring. But I'm so sorry, this cannot be looked over. Even he told us that, and even I'm telling you that. So I guess history repeats itself. So please bear with me. You will have to read or understand how the different schools of thought made the subject. And as I outlined it for you in a while back, it's in the same manner that we learned to draw, we learned to describe, we learned to represent, and we learned to express. All these will come in, and the subject becomes a holistic one. So, coming to our first few names that we have in the Greek classical geographers, this is the period which is very old, classical, and as we always say, a period you can't do without because they set the ground rules. Okay, out of which, however, see a simple thing, if you ever read Homer's Iliad, is supposed to be one of the most crucial contributions to literature in any way. Even in that, he mentions the winds, and that we picked up and we said, okay, he mentioned this is north wind, this is east wind, west wind, and the south wind. Now, for them, winds were very important in Europe. It doesn't seem so important to you because you're the only important wind that you are concerned with, I'm concerned with, is the monsoons. And unless there is a cyclonic wind which is bothering us, we don't generally care if the wind direction is southeast, northwest, east, west, wherever it is going. But for them, it's very important. Some of the winds are warm winds, so they bring warm weather for them in Europe. Some of those winds are cold winds. They bring colder weather for them. Their cultivations are around that. Their crop cycles are around there. There's snow melt around that, so they have to be very careful with them. Also, they have some things which are called local winds there, and which is very important for them because without that, a lot of their cultivation would not really happen. So, technically speaking, the descriptions were found. Then we come to Thales, who was talking about earth, and you have a floating idea on water. When I do the Chinese one, you will see the Chinese had a very nice view, of course, of the earth. They thought that the earth had a topi on it, which was the heaven. So we'll come to that. Now, the Chinese people are making us think very hard, right? They've given us a tough task to manage the coronavirus. And I think right now the latest circulating news is on Jack Ma. So an axiometer, as you see, an axiometer, see, look at this instrument that he drew, or sorry, he made. Way back, I think if you are coming into India, you will see, if you visited Delhi, if you visited Jaipur, you will see that there are astronomical centers which were made in India. They were called the Jantar Mantar. And it's extremely scientific if you go there. So please do not think that ancient people never knew how to calculate things. This was actually an exact way in which they were calculating celestial phenomena. And even today, some of our measurements still have to adhere to that. Because one of the things the Greeks gave us was actually the circumference of the earth. And nobody really worked hard to change that much. Of course, the numbers were a little faulty at that stage because the method of calculation was worked upon, and of course, we made certain changes to it. But more importantly, look at this gentleman called Hecacitus. Okay, an axiometer. Please look at his map. Such a simple map, right? That there is only three places in this world, which is called Europe. There is a Libya, and there's an Asia, and there is an ocean. Nothing else. World is a simple place. Only Greeks exist, right? So, in a world like that, of course, Heraclitus is introducing two very strong terms, and those two strong terms will come to us in use even today. And these are the two terms, if I may just take my cursor there, these are the two approaches he gives to geography. One is take a systematic description view of anything. Second, the descriptions have to be detailed, right? The law seeking means systematically doing it. And second is an ideographic. Even today, some of the geographers are hardcore followers of these two. Okay. The other thing that he also gave us a map of the earth and he calculated the age of the earth. But however, he calculated it at only 4 billion, which we are far above. We are more than 6 billion years old right now. So, coming to the other important people, any one of you studying any discipline, sciences, social sciences, or even literature, cannot further study without Aristotle and Plato. Two people who are the biggest contributors to any form of education in this world. And they have also contributed to our thinking largely of human geography because they gave the emphasis on what is this analysis of people. And when you come to people, there is something called deductive reasoning. So if you look at me, I may have a straight hair, right? So similarly, somebody with woolly hair and a complexion maybe a little tad darker than me and very much more darker than me could be from another geographical region because the climate would have tampered with the skin color over generations and giving the person a darker color. I have a straighter hair because genetically you can deduce that I come from this climatic region, so this is my structure. So deductions started coming in, very important to us. Today people laugh at it, but then it's a fact. You need to deduce things, you need to come to it. And as a researcher, someday some of you will take this up as a profession. As a researcher, sometimes you just have tip of the things you have to deduce. As a geographer, don't do what I do, but then yes, as a geographer, if you're out on the streets, and not streets of Bombay, please, you'll not get to see a lot of them. But yes, in Bombay also, I tell people, next time you go out into the sea, try going more towards the neckline of Bombay, or what is it called, the necklace, the Queen's necklace of Mumbai. There is a point there which is the tip, which is called the Dolphin's Nose. Did you know that? And it's a place which is full of dolphins. Nobody knows that. Nobody allows you to go there. And so there are parts in Bombay which are still showing you cliff features from the past. What are cliffs? These are the seashore features which are there. So there are cliffs here that you can see. Right here in Bombay, there is a beautiful plug. You understand what's a plug? It's a volcanic plug. So it's a plug of a volcano which is still remaining there, and there are people living around that. So it's in this place you do see certain geographical phenomena which is spectacular. So it happens all over the world, and you can deduce from certain places. Now, if I keep moving towards, let's say, Lonavala, I get to see beautiful flat topped hills. So what can I deduce? If I go there, they are black, they are flat topped, so they're plateau like, right? So if there's a plateau, then I can deduce that, okay, in this region, we know that there had been a Deccan eruption that had happened. Is it because of that? If I go close by, I need to analyze that place and see if that place still has eruptions of those periods. I can study that. I can analyze that, but I can still deduce a lot of things from that. So deduction forms a very important part which came in from Plato's time. Aristotle, of course, was one of the mavericks that one talks about and introduced a lot of interesting things in human geography, which perhaps did not exist. And when you study about geography in the early 19th century also, what geographers were doing all over the world was they were taking natural regions and they were studying natural regions in a big way. That is what regional geography was in those days. And in the past, people chose between you want to study regional geography, you want to study physical geography, what do you want to study? So in a regional geography, you picked up, for example, an equatorial zone, and then in the equatorial zone, okay, so you said, okay, fine, who lives there? What kind? What is the indigenous people living there to understand what life was and still is, perhaps in many parts. So when you see that kind of an area, then indigenous people living there, okay, so you went to Congo, all right, you came across the Bantu Negroes of the Congo, and then you studied about them. You went to the Middle East areas, you went and you saw the Bedouins there and you're excited about them. Bedouins are one of the most important nomadic communities there. Similarly, you would have heard about the Eskimos for that matter. They are today called the Inuits, and they're living in the Tundra region. Extremely well spaced out, and but studies were immense. So, what did we study? What did the person do? What kind of activity they did? What did he eat? Obviously, he ate what he got. So, you can't expect an Eskimo to eat what is found in the equatorial region because of the vast geographical dissimilarities that are there of temperature and rainfall and every other thing that you spoke about. So Aristotle, important to us. Then comes another very important person who gave us the first time we were looking at climatic zones. But remember, their climatic analysis was very nascent, very basic, but it was there. They were clearly trying to understand what is there. But he gave measurements. He also started calculating latitudes and longitudes. And that's why he is quite a favorite with many people who love that discipline. I'll move to the last person in this list, right? He is another of the person to look up to. I couldn't help but give you that map. Please see the map. Can you see this map? And see, Libya is here, Asia is here, India is here, right? So somewhere they found India too. I was so happy because Strabo was a traveler. He traveled, means he moved. And this is as he moved, he has drawn this. And his map is so, if I may use the word, very cute because it's not yet complete, but it's very cute. The important thing is that when I was later, not for your particular course right now, but there's a part of a study which I'm also doing right now, and I came across terminologies and stuff where I saw that ancient people in the European part knew India, but they were a little confused where exactly India was located. So what they thought was that because they had already ingressed into Africa, they were travelers into Africa, and moving to Africa from Europe is not a big deal. It's been happening from the past. You've heard about stories about, all those the wooden horses and the Helens of Troy and everything. So from the time of Julius Caesar, they have been moving into Africa. So they knew Africa. But what they were not sure of is where exactly in Africa was India. So many references that we get have actually placed India right next to Ethiopia. If you know where Ethiopia is, I mean, there's no way I can show you in this, but if you are familiar with the Africa map, Ethiopia is extremely to the right side. And so they thought that when Africa ends that side, they did not know it ended, that that's exactly the place where India is. And many references and travelers' accounts call Indians Eastern Ethiopians. How sad, right? But we were called that. So there was a little confusion of the geographical difference in distance at that stage, but it's okay. You have to give it to them. They didn't have internet and they didn't have what you have in your hand. You just want to put in a Google the place and put it into the map, and the map shows you exactly where you are. They didn't have that. So you have to give it to them that they were imagining a lot. And I love that imagination because that got us a lot of basic facts about things in our area. So the Romans, since I spoke to you about Ptolemy, I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'm going to show you the map that he drew, and see as you start seeing this map, the map starts getting a little more vast, and the map is starting to change. There is an emergence of sea, ocean, water bodies, etc., which was trying to emerge, and also two things that the Greeks and the Romans can be appreciated with is even study of astronomy, and you will see that even in the other geographers as well. When I look at Arab geographers, these people were closer to India than the Greeks. And Arabs have a very strange, or a unique position in geography, whether it's in geography or anything else. I spoke about the Bedouins to you in a while back. Arabs are located in the midst of Western culture and Eastern culture. So it's a confluence area. In the past, if you see the history, the trading, if you see the Bedouin cultures, the Arabs were places where Eastern material got loaded off, Western material got loaded off, got exchanged. Who was exchanging? Either the Bedouins or later on Arabs. That's why Dubai is one of the most important confluence points that you have in the Middle East. And that's, of course, more traditionally, more modern aspect. But when you look at the Arab geographers, and that's what I have put down here for you, you see a lot of them contributed to the climate because their climatic they were in an extreme climatic zone, right? So they needed to understand the climate, they needed to understand when water was happening, when they needed to understand what was the wind structure like, how are they going to manage it, etc. So their emphasis is big time into climate. They actually made a climatic atlas, and that's what you can see there. It's called Kitabe Akshal. That's the climatic atlas that they had. Excuse me. The second one, which is very interesting from that side, is the study of the monsoon. The word Mosam comes from the Arabic word, if you know that. So Mosam gave you the word monsoons. So again, a major contribution, of course, not the word, but the whole process which they were trying to identify. Not to say that they did not work on geomorphology. So they did work on geomorphology. I'm told there are people who are not from geography here. Geomorphology is the study of landforms. So mountains, plateaus, plains, all that, how they are formed, how the denudation happens, all of that. To give you an example, I'm sure you've heard about the Aravalli Mountains. The Aravalli Mountains is located, I'm sure, in Rajasthan. Ravali is a very important tourist destination in the Mount Abu area, so you would have visited that. So I'm just taking that example. Aravalli is a whole mountain, but it is extremely denuded. It is around 6 billion years old. It was formed in the first Precambrian times. That time it was a tall, beautiful mountain, but today it is absolutely a chota mountain that you can see. This Chota mountain that you see has been denuded by forces of nature. So that study that one does, how it got denuded, what happened, how did it go, will all fall into geomorphology. Now, this is one man you have to study. Anyone who studies Arab geography always comes across Battuta, Ibn Battuta, how you'd like to call. People make when different kinds of references to him is because why? Is because he traveled. And he traveled all over the entire. Can you see this? I had to give his maps, his journey, which was, of course, put in a newer map, not in an older map. And based on this, he made his own Idris's map he followed, and he was making this map. See the areas he traveled. Okay, when you calculate that, it was not even 50,000 square miles. But then it's okay. In those days, that much is fair enough. But what he did was he stayed in Indian court, he stayed in Chinese court, wherever he went, he stayed in the court, he understood the place, he wrote about them, and that became a mammoth travelogue for us to understand. The other one, like I promised, I think I'm venturing into my question time in about 3 4 minutes. I'll give you some questioning time. So another school, okay, we can't do without this school. This school is what puts in or adds many things, and subsequently people studying geography, you'll come across landforms made by him, I mean studied by somebody. You'll come across models, social models. You will come across economically designed models on India. Many things come from the German school. So what is this German school? Again, this was a much later one, not as old as your Greeks and Romans, but this period gave you two people, these two people, Karl Ritter and Humboldt. Ritter and Humboldt together are believed to have made a massive contribution to geography. Now, what did they do? You've heard about a geographical society. Today, you have it in India as well. They came up with periodicals. All current recent researches were put down in those periodicals, and that ensured that there was a massive amount of documentation that we could arrive at. Apart from that, one other thing which the German school also was struggling, and that is why I wrote this down for you, is that they found that people were not interested in geography. Not very different today. Even today, several people opt out of geography. And I tell you this, whatever you are, you have to be first a geographer because you have to love this earth. So if you can love the earth, you are a geographer at heart. If you can't love this earth, I'm so sorry to say, you have to find your calling somewhere else. So in the German school, they found that people were not interested in geography. And so they started creating and they started attracting students based on whatever way they could. So sometimes they reached out, they came up with new ideas, they spoke to people. So that was the main turning around that they did, got in more people. But the most important contribution is listed for you here. Excuse me. Mapping. Why mapping? Because Germans were already into mapping. They had picked up the European mapping structures, and they were trying to innovate, create, add things. And remember, there's a world war which is going to come in later that is going to show the supremacy of these Germans. So technically, I think there's a sound somewhere.
અહીંયા અહીંયા આ ખાનામાં અરે એ ઉપર ખાનામાં હા
All right.
I've muted her, madam. I've muted her.
So there's mapping. One important thing they did, they went into explorations also. So their exploration was not conquering new lands, that had already happened. Their exploration was around areas where they lived, mapping them and adding to their own German directory. That was very important. Vesuvius was an important rock for all of Europe, so there were studies on volcanoes made on that. They studied ocean currents, which many people have not done in the past. And what are the ocean currents? These are very strong movement of water which happens all over in our seas, on oceans, particularly in oceans, large water bodies. What is the importance of these ocean water bodies? Currents. They ensure that a place is a warm place or a cold place. And a place which has a warm current passing through it makes the place warm. A place which has a cold current passing through it makes it a cold current or a cold place. One story about ocean currents which really goes off beat for you is the El Nino and the La Nina. I'm sure you're familiar with this when people talk about climate change. When they were talking to try and justify why climate change was happening, they tried to give this excuse, or they tried to explain it through the El Nino and La Nina. The two terms mean El Nino means baby Christ and La Nina is a sister of Christ. Both of these two terms is because in the Peruvian areas in South America, there is a current which flows there, and in certain years, an alternating warm current flows in, and that makes it a little different climatically. And that is the reason. So the years there were freaky weather, we all over the world started saying that those were the El Nino years, and La Nina was, of course, the counter current that came in. So there were certain justifications that today we're trying to look at the climate change with the ocean currents, but it was studied in, or begun to be studied in, the German times. But the last thing, of course, Cosmos was their introductory volumes that they created. But again, two things, please note the last 2 points. Of course, two people, that is your Humboldt and Ritter, both of them, but very different. One was more about experimenting things, scientific thinking, and trying to put down things accordingly. Ritter was more descriptive. He wanted a detailed study, but he did not mind testing it if he wanted it. So two people thought of it differently. And how did we use this in a later date? What you will see is that gradually as geography evolved and that quantitative revolution came in, people started using Humboldt and Ritter to express themselves a lot more. However, let me also tell you, post the quantitative revolution, when disciplines got identified, one discipline emerged, which was called human geography. And in human geography, what you also see is that a new branch of thinking, which is called behavioral geography, that tended to emerge. So I'm going to give you this 5 minutes to ask me any question. I shall stop sharing so I can see your faces.
So please keep the cameras on.
Yeah, any questions, anybody, anything that you would like me to talk, and then we will take this forward. I know otherwise it'll get boring. You must have gone off to sleep by now. I can see Shesh. Shesh, what's your problem? Anything that you would like to ask Shesh? He was writing something.
No, ma'am.
So Shesh, why did you take up geoinformatics?
Yes, sir. So, because geography, मतलब मेरा geography सब्जेक्ट थोड़ा मतलब क्या बोलते हैं उसको, अच्छा था, मेरे को पसंद था geography, मतलब सीखना क्या क्या होता है मतलब उसमें, इसलिए मैंने geography लिया। बाद में वो जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स बाद में सीखा TYBA में। इसके बारे में हमें बाद में फिर जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स का थोड़ा अच्छा लगा, फिर इसलिए मैं जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स लिया फिर।
आपको geography अच्छा लगता है ना?
हाँ,
क्योंकि बाद में जब एनालिसिस करोगे तभी थोड़ा काम पे आना चाहिए।
हाँ, यस मैम।
हाँ, ठीक है। Now let me see who can I pull up next. Yes, Komal, would you like to say something? आपने क्यों लिया? आप ज्योग्राफी से है, जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स से?
No, ma'am, from IT.
IT. तो आपको क्या लगता है? Is it of any worth studying these subjects, and how do you want to use it?
No, ma'am, I don't like history geography.
You don't like geography? Thank you so much. Ashley and myself will not mind, don't worry.
Yeah.
So why is it that you have taken it? And suppose you get an analysis to do, would you be able to do it for geographical analysis?
Yes.
You'll be able to do it, right? Okay, great. Now I can see Ritti or Ritu, what's your name? Ritti. Ritti, can you tell me why geography? You like geography? Unmute. Priti, unmute. All right, we'll get back to you later. So let me just scroll down. Okay, Riti's mic is not working. It's all right. Seema can, who's this? Okay, Avishkar, right? That's your name, Avishkar?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Avishkar. Now you have taken geography. I'm so happy. आपने क्यों लिया geography?
Ma'am, I've taken geoinformatics.
Okay.
I actually basically I was studying geography in BA. So when I took guidance from some of the our experienced professors, so they guided me regarding there is such a field. There are two options, that is privacy, geomorphology, and informatics also. So when I researched about this field, I got very much interested in it, and there is also a great scope in the coming time. And coincidentally, my hobbies and my interests are also going in the same way. So I want to do it. So I opted it.
All right, great, lovely. So great for you, because you will realize, and you have Ashley on board with you. Ashley is also a very good geographer who's gone into geoinformatics as well. But do understand that it is a very nice stream, and it can be an earning scheme for you all as well, which is why you need to go for it. It's sometimes you need to make choices based on what kind of jobs will come out of it, right? So when you look at that,
Yes,
this is a stream which is going to be very upcoming, and people will be willing to hire you for a great amount of money. So when you earn a lot of money, think about us, okay?
yes, ma'am.
So it's about, I think, 6 o'clock. Shall I take one more question, and then maybe I will go ahead, because I missed Ricky, and let me see. So moving. Anybody would like to come in, or you want me to ask you?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am,
अरे ऋतिक का खोल दिया
my mic
माइक्रोफोन.
is working.
अभी बोलो ऋति आप.
Ma'am, I rejoined, then it started working.
अच्छा, तो आप बोलो, आपको क्या बोल रहे हैं हम?
Ma'am, earlier, since school times, I was interested in UPSC exams for civil services, and then I got to know that we have to choose an optional subject. So geography has been my favorite. So I thought that I would study geography for UPSC, and as we all know, it is very difficult to crack. So my backup plan is being a geography professor. So geography is very beneficial for me for both my goals, for UPSC exams also, and if it is not cracked, then for as a professor I would like to be, because Moshmi ma'am has inspired me to be a professor.
Oh, she's an inspiration for sure. So lovely to hear
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Lovely to hear that. I want to ask Keval,
Thank
because
you,
I can
ma'am.
see a very nice smiling face in Keval. Keval, आपको कुछ बोलना है? इतना
Uh,
smile दे रहे हो आप.
Thank you, ma'am.
हाँ, बोलो. Keval, I know you're from MSc IT. You'll never take geography. तो
Yes,
आप
ma'am.
बराबर है ना, समझ गए. तो ये जो मैं इतना लंबा 1 घंटा का भाषण दिया, उसमें से कुछ समझ आया?
आप बोल रहे हो थोड़ा फास्ट जा रहा है मैम, बट समझ रहा है, मतलब जो
बहुत
लिखा हुआ है
fast?
वो समझ रहा है. बहुत फास्ट है, बट मेरे लिए आई गेस.
अच्छा, अच्छा फीडबैक है. तो मैं थोड़ा स्लो जाऊं क्या?
अब मेरे को तो इशू नहीं है, बट बाकी लोग अभी बोलेंगे नहीं, तो मेरे को आई डोंट थिंक यू शुड. आपके हिसाब से जाओ.
नहीं मैम, सही जा रहे हो आप.
नहीं तो सो जाएगा सब. वैसे सोने के लिए नेक्स्ट हाफ है, इसीलिए थोड़ा जगाया आप लोगों को. फिर बीच में एक और बार एंट्री करते हैं, so that we can wake you up a little, because we cannot have a direct one-to-one talk there. Then it is a little more easy, and I can reach out to you a little more. I may be fast, I will try and see, पर मुझे पता नहीं मैं कंट्रोल कर पाऊंगी या नहीं. शायद मैं जल्दी ही बोलती हूँ.
ओके मैम, नो इश्यूज मैम.
कोशिश करूंगी, लेकिन
नो
थैंक यू.
इश्यूज मैम.
Yeah, so anybody else would like to talk? Otherwise, I'll just go back to the class. No? All right. Now let me tell you what used to happen when anybody asked us anything in the class. हम तो सर नीचे करके बैठ जाते थे. भाई किसी को नहीं मुंह खोलना है. And at the last event, when you're pulled up, like you just give that teacher that last saddest glance that I really have nothing to say. I am fine. Just teach and go. तो उस हिसाब से ही चलते हैं. Let's go back to the class. It's quite a hectic class, I know, but we will try, right? So let me go back. Please give me a minute to switch on a light because I think it's getting dark here. Okay, so now I hope now I'm audible and you can see the screen. So coming back to our analysis and a path that we are trying to find, then where are we in India? ये भी एक बहुत important question है. और जब हम इंडिया के बारे में सोचते हैं तो सबसे पहले आपको लगता है कि everything that is done in India would have been really, घिसा पिटा and not so good. Today, for example, I was reading the newspaper जहाँ पे आपको they are describing about the coronavirus vaccine, and it is being indigenously developed by an ex-company in India, and जो बाकियों को पसंद नहीं. And Indians really don't want the Indian brand. They want to buy the Oxford brand or maybe any other international brand. So at a time when you are looking at India, सबसे importantly, please understand that India has a very rich past. However, pushed to a sideline, however much people have ruined our traditions to a certain extent, however much people don't appreciate it, but in India, our history shows that we have made a very important contribution to almost all disciplines, including geography. And geography is called Bhugol in Indian context. I'm sure in Hindi we still call it Bhugol, so it's fine to understand that. And it came about, the term was not used today, the term was used in the Puranas, which was of course one of our ancient textbooks that were there with us. People studied from the Vedas, people studied from something called Upanishads, people studied from something called Puranas. And as you see all these books that are there, हर book में थोड़ा 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 करके we have appreciated and used and developed even some part of geography. And that is why geography's evolution is also there in the ancient Indian texts. So just for your understanding, I've divided this entire period into three types. You have an ancient period, a medieval period, and a British period. And of course, as you see it, as you read it, as my friend just now told me that sometimes it's easier to read, and of course it is to read, and that's a human psychology. When I want to deviate you out from what I'm saying, I am going to put it down in writing. Because a common Indian mind is पहले let's read it, no? Because ये कुछ भी फालतू बोल सकती है, लिखने में वहाँ पे गड़बड़ नहीं होगा. So technically speaking, what we have developed is everything. So if you just read this through, you will see we did Earth description, we did astronomy, we did travelogues, we did development of new lands, we did mapping also. So we have done every bit of it in Indian geographers. But I just thought I will show you this. Can you see this map? This has been found in a Purana. Okay, the Puranas as they are called. ये जो छोटा सा circle आपको बीच में दिख रहा है, even आप जो informatics से भी हो, but please understand and love this part. This part they believed was supposed to be, some superior kind of an area. A mountain was there. Meru is a mountain. Okay, and then they believed that all these were like lotus का जो petals होता है, उस तरीके से ये सारे 9 divisions थे. ये जो 9 divisions आपको देख रहे हैं, उनके अलग-अलग नाम दिया गया था. Or it was said that when you see the Bharata, this is where supposedly India was, and all of this was the remaining part of the world, which is what they thought existed, and they called it Jambudeep. they thought that this was jambu, means jamun जो होता है, jamun का seed है. And they believe that in between this jamun seed and this other places, the separations that were there were made of different kinds of seeds. And एक सी को उन्होंने एक नाम दिया. Like they felt कि एक सी honey का बना हुआ है, एक सी milk का बना हुआ है, etc. Don't have to believe that, but then let's assume that उसकी कुछ significance होंगे जो उन्होंने दिया था. But उससे भी interesting जो है, later on when the British came to India, you had seen my previous slide here. आप देखोगे कि ब्रिटिश लोग जो आए थे ना, उन्होंने they read a lot about our Puranas. They read a lot about our old texts, and they tried to extract information from there as to how much did the Indians know, and they wanted to take it back to UK, and they have. So from your Kohinoor diamond to many good things are all in British museums. So when you see this thing, they try to extract, and this is there in an analysis which has come to us. And sadly, I feel so bad that I have to read their interpretation because I cannot read the language that is there or understand the language that is there. So it's beautiful, but they try to find out where this Meru mountain is, the British. And today, you know, where they have zeroed down this Meru mountain. पता नहीं आप लोगों ने कभी कैलाश मानसरोवर सुना होगा, कैलाश टेम्पल सुना होगा. So today we believe that this Meru जो माउंटेन है, ये शायद कैलाश टेम्पल है. उसके पीछे काफी मिथ्स है, काफी अच्छे स्टोरीज भी हैं, पर मैं उसमें जाना नहीं चाहती because there is a diversity of profile of students and people may or may not want to hear about that story. But technically speaking, वही जो एरिया है उसके ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा स्टडी है, इंक्लूडिंग नासा, जिसे आप शायद बहुत यूज करोगे अभी जब जियो इन्फो एंड अदर थिंग्स में आप जाओगे. तो नासा का भी स्टडीज इज देयर ऑन द मेरू, and the NASA's Meru study that you see also, they are fixated with the way this particular region is. There are lovely stories, we can talk about it later. I'll run quickly through the Chinese people because we don't like them, they gave us corona. So let us quickly just see two things that I would like you to focus. Most of Chinese contribution has been in astronomy and in cartography. And most of these two streams are the most critical streams because we needed to know the celestial things. We needed to know how the world was above us. We were trying to find out what the earth was like. कहाँ पे पहाड़ है, कहाँ पे क्या है. We also wanted to know where the countries are located. So maps and celestial or astronomy were the two things that we see a massive contribution from the Chinese. And of course, please read one thing out here, and there in their Kai-Ten theory, which they had in the 2nd century, I loved this. उनको लगा था कि अर्थ के ऊपर एक उल्टा बोल के हिसाब से heavens are there. So it's an upturned bowl which was on the earth. How sweet it would look, right? So if you would have had that. And the other thing is that the third one is even more interesting. These are very older theories that were there, just like we had a Meru theory, and we had that there were mountains, there were seas or oceans made out of milk, honey, curd, etc. In the same way, they would also have these unique ideas because remember, we are both Oriental in our cultures. And so we are two Oriental civilizations which existed in the past. And of course, very strongly we are there. So now let's move ahead to a little on maps now. We are getting into the area where all our friends who don't like geography should take a little more interest because you will be making maps perhaps for everybody on other things. So when we saw geography, everybody kept saying that क्या-क्या हमने ढूंढा, maps तो हमने जरूर बनाए. From Ptolemy's time to Aaj tak, there is a continuous usage of maps. See this map. Can you see this? पहले हम जब maps बनाते थे तो उसको हम काफी sketch के हिसाब से बनाते थे. So what would we do? We would just use, your imagination, what you saw, you positioned yourself at a certain place, you picked up spots, you said, okay, this one to this, roughly it looks like itna hoga, right, and draw it out. Now I'm showing you New York because a lot of you love United States of America, right? So if I'm showing you New York, this is the area that I'm showing you, okay? These are the Staten Islands, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and Manhattan. And see, this is how they drew this. आपको इसमें से इसमें कुछ सिमिलर लगता है, कुछ तो नहीं, पर कम से कम ये दोनों तो सिमिलर है. आपको दिख ही रहा है कि इसमें कुछ पानी का है, which is your Hudson River. So technically speaking, that is how it began, right? It's the presentations of how you saw. See some older maps of New York which I could trace. ये Brooklyn और Long Island का मैप था. ये इसको देखो आप कैसे इन्होंने बनाया, काफी sketchily बनाया है, and this is made so well in a perfect angle, how exactly they allotted the lands. And if you, this was actually a very clearly even based on the plots allotted to the people. See this map, it was getting more and more precise. So mapping has always been something like that. Let me show you another kind of a map, right? Now see these two maps. They're not very far with each other, about 2 centuries apart. Yeah, this is a Arab map which was there, for a Mughal map which was there. So you can see all written in Urdu in this, right? So see all our measurements are in Urdu. And look at this map which came to us with a Portuguese traveler. He was accompanying Vasco da Gama, and thereafter he went back and he drew this. So this is his analysis. Now, what I was trying to tell you that my teacher long back told me is that the measurements in the past are not proportionate to the areas that you see today. And that is a reality. So you can see it there, because as people traveled, unko laga ye yahan tak hai, and that's where they drew it till. So these are some of those old maps, very interesting about India. But please do understand at this stage also, whether you see this map or whether you see the Kitab Celebi, दोनों ही books को आप, दोनों ही maps को आप देखोगे, दोनों में the oceans are clearly defined. You see the oceans, and of course you also see the areas are clearly defined. I have not added any color to it. The color was given by them, run down maybe after so many years. But today when you map, we do not use at least this color for oceans. We will be using another color which you will be told eventually. So then that is the color that they used in the past. So technically speaking, you have a zonation, a formation which was beginning to happen in all over the world. अब एक बहुत important problem. Why did we change? If geography was going so nice, so happy, and if geography was, so to itself, कुछ problem नहीं था geography का, तो हमने geography को क्यों बदला? और हमने geography को क्यों बदलने के लिए कोई कोशिश भी किया? So we have attempted to modify the subject. And when we attempt to modify a subject, we bring in new things, right? And this is what was studied by a person called Thomas Kuhn in his famous paper on the structure of scientific revolution. He wrote a lot of things, but I drew a small structure for you at the base. So I am going to take you here. This is not related to his thing. It's more to do with what happens to disciplines. Discipline means हम geography की बात कर सकते हैं. You can talk about any subject. If you love economics, it could be economics. If you love, let us say, history, it could be history. Any subject for that matter. So all early disciplines are on this side of your arrow, and they are all there as they are continuously developing and evolving. So if it had x quantity matter, it goes into x plus 1 quantity to x plus 2 quantity, and it goes on. So it becomes a lot of things that you start accumulating to your subject. So that is what we call as a pre-paradigm period, where materials have come in, subject is there. Then there is a staling situation, or the subject becomes full of material and nothing new happens to that subject. This is the time that the subject undergoes change. That change is the paradigm period. What is a paradigm? Paradigm is a change. The change could be evolutionary, matlab dheere dheere. The change can be very quick. That means sharp change. But as what we have watched, a sharp change also is a 10 to a 20-year change. So it's a gradual transformation of a subject from what it was in the past to something which it evolves later on. So may I bring this again? Something was what it was in the past. I'm going to make it more nicer so that it starts evolving to a new subject for the future. And that is where you come here and you become a mature discipline. All disciplines go through this. It's just that I'm using it to show it or to express it in my subject. All disciplines have periods when they slow down, again they rise, again they slow down, again they rise. And this is the Kuhn's idea of the paradigm. The paradigms were there, paradigms are there, and paradigm has to be understood. Okay, so it is this transformational change from what it was in the past to something that is happening in the future, and that happening that is going to take place can take place in any significant amount of time, can take place in a short time period, whatever, but the change is required. Okay. Right at the beginning, I said I'll introduce and talk a little about quantitative revolution, right? Lot of things were there. People started talking about, oh, okay, the discipline is not expressing things numerically. The discipline is not. So it's something like this. You suppose I'm trying to calculate the number of, let's say, tourists who come to India. So I put out certain sheets into the airport. I give it to the immigration. I gave it to the people at the customs. I tell everybody to do their marking. Every day I compute the data and I get a data, right? It's a data. And once the data is with me, I know, okay, so this day on this date, so today is the 5th, on the 5th, from morning 6 a.m. to evening 6 p.m., I had, let us say, 1,000 people who came in from abroad. Okay, I want to separate it further. Then in my data collection sheet, I should also have Asia, Africa, etc. And I will get whichever continent you want more specific to places, I can do that. So I can create that data. But that data is today we are calculating that data to understand how many people have come. If I want to find out if these 100 or 1,000 people who have come, do they like India? Even then I can compute that. What I have to do is I have to start creating certain models in which I will make them answer. Once they answer, I give a scale, I calculate. But my scale, which I have chosen, if I'm not adhering to a given scale, then can be, discussed, challenged, or even brought down by another person. So suppose I feel that I've created a scale where I've created, 1 to 10 numbers, and I told people, please mark how much you like Mumbai, and everybody has said they hate Mumbai, and they put 1 on that scale. So then I will come back and say that 1,000 people who came to India, they did not like Mumbai at all, 10%. Ashley goes through my data and he says, no, I do not do it that way. I'm just going to put it in a different form, and I'm going to add more figures and put different calculations. And I put that if it is 1, I will do this. If it is 2, I will do this. And he makes a more suggestive, comprehensive, understandable model. He can also be correct. I can also be correct because my data says this is it. His data says this is it. But he can run me down because even if it is a quantifiable data, it is not necessary that everybody will accept that data. The same thing happened in your quantitative revolution. People were seeking to enumerate things. So they brought in statistical techniques. They read a lot into and brought it into the discipline. But as we were developing or adding these things, remember, that's what I gave it to you. The first document that came in was called A Theory of Games and Economic Behavior. Even if we were doing that, remember, these are again defiable. These are not, those lines which cannot be broken. So these are not any analysis which cannot be shot down. So it is possible to bring them down, and that kept on happening. So even today, as we have absorbed a lot of the things from the quantitative revolution, sometimes it so happens that we are creating something, and at the same time, we are also trying to, bring down something. That has happened today as well. Whether it is good or bad is something which we have to understand. And that is the criticism part of quantitative revolution. So paradigms, we are talking about a paradigm, right? Quantitative revolution was our first paradigm that we faced. Paradigms, maybe it's coming into a subject, but it can still be shut down. And again, another time comes in, and then again, another paradigm can come. So for us, we've had our quantifiable aspects come in the first time in our first paradigm in quantitative revolution. Then again, the subject was moving along. Now we've absorbed a new paradigm in geoinformatics. And that is why now we are pretty excited about bringing in that much of facts into our subject. Is it going to be good? Of course, it's going to be good because that's the way forward. Even if you saw in quantitative revolution, some people never liked it. I have put on the words of Spate. You know who was Spate? Spate was one of the most important British officers in India. He has given a descriptive study about India. And even today, it's a Bible to go back to because there's not a part he has not written about. Very well described. He has come up with a description of India, the best description. So even today, it was written in the early when the British were there. Even today, I would appreciate anybody giving me a statement from Spate because that was the Bible and that still is the Bible. So in the event of Spate's description, Spate says that of course I don't accept quantitative revolution, but does that mean that the concept of quantitative revolution did not come into our subject? No, the subject has absorbed quantitative revolution. We have absorbed statistical techniques. We have absorbed different empirical studies. And what best if you study? I mean, some days people who are in geography, you will come across a person who is called W.M. Davis. And when you see Davis, Davis was actually he had quantified the evolution of landforms. So he was perhaps even that early that he was studying. He had thought of quantifying it. So it is possible to quantify, and it is possible that you will accept it in a discipline. So today, as geographers, as people who have evolved in the subject, we've also introduced this into different parameters. We also keep doing that study. And in the future also, as you look at the next paradigm is where I'm hitting at geoinformatics, the transition that we are going into, it's going to be another major field of emphasis, and you all need to absorb that either from the geography discipline or from your IT discipline or from even geoinformatics discipline. What will this escalate into? Of course, it will give you a lot of jobs, don't worry, right? This is another model that came up as to why subjects are evolving. And of course, it's like a human being. If you look at me, at a certain time, I would have started my education. I would have moved on to, accumulate. That's the descriptive part that we were talking about. I would have accumulated a lot of knowledge. And as I went along, I processed that knowledge within myself. And as I started teaching, which would be so many decades back, when I started teaching, I'm trying to use that into my everyday life, teach it across to people. It gets a more clearer thought process to me. I'm assimilating, I'm growing, and the same way I'm evolving. Remember, you will all have to evolve. In your subjects, you will evolve. Today, you are in that knowledge acquisition stage, but someday you evolve. So the subject for us, whether it is a geography or it is any other discipline, will also need to evolve. Otherwise, it dies. Nobody likes a dead subject, right? And nobody wants to just use a subject for just अच्छा ठीक है करना है subject है school का subject है it's there till grade 10 let's just about finish it and move on. If you want to take it up that way, it's possible to take it up that way. If you want to take it up as a fashion, it's a different ball game altogether. So that's where we need to think. So of course we do take a Latour's model whenever we look at evolution of a subject. And इसमें अगर आप देखोगे इतना लंबा चौड़ा मत सोचो, आप बाजू का राइट साइड का डायग्राम देख लो, उसमें यही लगता है कि जब एक सब्जेक्ट को चेंज करना है, when you want to change a subject, उस सब्जेक्ट को एक पुश की जरूरत है. Means something needs to happen to make you change. It's as simple as that. Maybe you are a person who काफी आराम से रहता है, just like our subject was. आराम से रहता है, he knows his subject, knows everything. But one fine day, somebody tells you something and you get very hurt. And you said, okay, he told me this, मैं करके देखता हूँ. So you are changing. So you need a push. For some people, for some subjects, that push has been sudden. For some subjects, the push has been gradual. In our subject, the push has been gradual. So we have continuously been absorbing. So our mobilization, our aspect of moving from where we were to where we are today is a gradual process that we have adopted. Some people may criticize this, but again, after them, what did we gain or what did we do after all these models and etc. that you saw? we brought it into us. And once we brought it into us, so the first time that we saw, there's a book which you may read later on, written by Chorley and Haggard. It has all quantifiable techniques that you can use in geography. That's the first time we were accepting it. And well, much later, it is in 1967, we said, okay, great, there are models in geography, please use it if you want it had reached a position, right? So that you can use it in a certain way. Similarly, now when you see the quantitative revolution, uske baad kya ho gaya? Uske baad some people came up to say that I don't want to use the quantitative revolution techniques. I will still do geography, but I will do it in my way. The subject allowed it. The subject does not say that you cannot ideate, you cannot come up with a nomothetic approach, which is, model building approaches. I cannot tell somebody that don't develop theories, but जब आपके पास empirical data होगा, जब आपके पास solid data होगा, you can make workable models. Remember that. And when you are venturing into a much higher discipline, not today, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, when you have hardcore data with you, remember you can then make standalone fact-based statements. And that's important, will help you drive a lot of changes in your disciplines. That's why it was important for us to absorb the paradigms. Okay? अपना पैराडाइम्स तो बहुत सिंपल था, पहले क्वांटी आ गया, उसके बाद अपने लिए geoinformatics आ गया, or addition of all kinds of technology into mapping, because that's all the geographers know, right? See how the change happened. Now this you can also read. I'll take you quickly through this. So in the past, that means pre-20th century, geography means Earth. What is Earth? What is the distance between this? How is a mountain? Mountain is like this. This is this. This is that. This is all that we were talking about. वहां से हमने कहाँ shift किया? Today we are talking about women. We're talking about gender. We're talking about, let us say, tribal development. We're talking about so many other social issues. So हमने थोड़ा अपने आप को modify किया. We were in measurements. We just did hardcore. So यहाँ से यहाँ जाने में 10 मिनट लगता है, इतना distance measured, right? Today, it's not only measurements. Today, with measurements, you are putting in more inputs. So when you were walking, X, Y, Z things were on this side, X, Y, Z things were on that side. So I have increased the quantity of information that I had. वो पहले नहीं हो पाता था because you were doing a simplified version. I'll show you some ways in which the data were collected in the past. Phenomena explanations, very important tha. I grew up at least seeing something called the Halley's Comet, and they said that it will come back in 86 years. So I saw it quickly because I cannot live for 86 years to see the comet come back. It is a phenomena. People studied and explained, and Mr. Halley put down a theory for it, and I saw that. Similarly, people are telling you today is a red moon, today is a brown moon, today is a this moon. See it, because you never know, it's a phenomena. But somebody has studied those phenomena and put it down for you. In the past, there was a lot of focus on regional geography. मैंने बात किया थोड़ा सा regional geography का. Supposedly आप इंडिया की बात करोगे तो इंडिया में काफी सारे old or tribal people रहते थे, where they have been living in what is called natural environment. और natural environment क्या हो गया? It could be a desert. So if you go to the deserts of India, you can see the Banjaras, you can see the different kinds of tribal community living there, how they are living, why they are living, what they are eating, how they are cultivating, what kind of cattle are they rearing, all that you can study. That is exactly what it was in the past. But today, that is changing. What is changing today is we have brought in environmentalism, very important, and that's how I get my bread and butter, let me tell you. So environmentalism has become very big. Everybody is talking about climate change. Pata nahi kya hota hai, but just say yes, I know it's climate change. It just works. So climate change, etc. So environmentalism has grown. Not only that, you also have climatology that was very old, right from the Arabs. Even before that, I had told you in the Greek times as well. So climatology has changed, but today climatology uses technology. Models hai apne paas. The models can very precisely, the IMD today can very precisely tell you when the rains will happen, आज बारिश होगा, आज gloomy है, आज misty है. Everything they can tell you because their models are soundly in place. There we use technology, right? तो हमने भी थोड़ा paradigm को absorb किया है. Human geography was important, it still is, but today हमने बहुत नया चीजें उसमें add किया हुआ है. Calculations and mapping, because in the past people calculated खुद जाके. Today we are not having to do that, and as you get into more of this measurings and measurements, you will see that that's how it goes today, right? See how many things came in, and I could not fit it into my slide. There are more things which are continuously coming. शुरू हमने cartography से किया था, but so many things have been added. We've got political geography, anything related to countries, regions, wars, etc. Social geography, all things related to maybe gender and literacy, etc. Medical geography, again we are in the helm of a medical emergency, so I think हम इसको बहुत अच्छी तरह से समझते हैं. Environmental geography is of course to do with all aspects of environment, why it is impacting man, how is man behaving, do you really know what is happening, etc. Biogeography, everything to do with the biotic world. Very importantly, it has emerged as biogeography. Soil geography, of course, if you do not do soil geography, agriculture geography would not furnish. What is the agriculture geography doing? Which crop is growing there? Okay, in Maharashtra, it is cotton which is growing. Why is it cotton? Because, of course, it is black soil that is there. Why black soil is there? Deductive approach, I'm taking you. Why black soil is there is because there was a volcanic eruption. So what if it was a volcanic eruption? But that volcanic eruption was a basic lava eruption. So it was high in or rich in basic elements. And so it is black in color, etc. So you can derive that, right? Similarly, you have geoinformatics that is there for you, please remember. And of course, you've got regional planning, which is a branch which people studied in the past immensely, even now we do, but a lot of it has gone the technology way in regional planning. Rural geography becomes very important today because we are mapping rural areas extensively. Similarly, there's urban geography. We all fall into if Mumbai will fall into an urban geography area. So cultural geography and of course transport geography. This is not limited to it, please. This can go far, far beyond, right? Now, as I'm entering into the last, say about half hour, very importantly for you now, let's look at geoinformatics, right? Why and what is this? It's a science branch. So please, you're happy, you're into the science branches, but what is it going to address? It's going to address all geographical problems, cartography, geosciences, and branches of science and engineering. You can find any data, any usage, use the mapping from our perspective, from the geography's perspective. Please use mapping and every other thing. It is not necessary that you really have to need a geographical knowledge, but it helps, right? It does help to have a knowledge, but if it is okay if you don't have the knowledge, you can read up. Mr. Google knows a lot more than all of us together. So you can ask Mr. Google to guide you as to understanding what exactly it is meaning. So understand, learn, acquire this, because this is going to be your next, for some people, at least half of the class that I see, it's going to be one of the very important things that you really need to map and identify. Then comes the three things that we generally look at in the geoinformatics, which you can see is the GIS, the Geographical Information System. We use it extensively in our subject. Why do we use it extensively in our subject? Because it helps us to represent any thematic versions or anything on our map. So assume, I think, just offbeat if I have to say that if I am mapping for Mumbai and I want to know which areas the mangroves are, I can map that in my map of Mumbai. For that, I need to have layers. The layers are the information sheets, which I will incorporate into my information system, and then I will be using that. When I talk about remote sensing, I'll show you an image. It's just that you cannot go everywhere. So in certain places from a remote area, we have a system in place which allows us to capture data, and that data capturing is thereafter synthesized and used. Today, remote sensing is the way the entire Indian, let's say the space and other related activities are going on. GPS systems, you know it exactly. All of us use it, whether you're going to a new place or you are positioning an aircraft, whatever way that we are trying to use. See, this is how we used to map in the past. I've also done it in this way. Some of you would have done it, or you may not have done it. So what we did was that we had to actually physically go to places, and this is a very old picture of some British guy. That's how we did it. So some of you who have used a topographical sheet, please understand that was actually done like this. People actually went to the field, collected data, put it together, made it, and therefore the Survey of India, it was led by British officers, and the Survey of India was trying to calculate. So the first Survey of India map that you have is the best detailed map that you had. What happened thereafter is that we started updating the map. So the first time we made it, and then we kept on updating. Can you see how the instruments have also changed? Initially, they used to be something like this, and I think that's how we grew up using. Today, they have become digital and more sophisticated as you use them. Now, all these equipments still exist, and in the past, if you were studying on the subject of geography, at least we did when we were in Kolkata University, we had to use all these surveys, equipments, and do surveys and show it and do it. When we went on our regular trips, we had to calculate because we had to come back with the collecting data. And so we used to calculate like that. It's very interesting to use these equipments. See this. This is a digital theodolite. Do you know the story of Mount Everest? Mount Everest in the last few days has been given a new height, right? It's that last 3 digits which have changed. Now, what was the real problem in the past? In the past was that the Indian Survey of India, the Survey of India office in India had mapped the Mount Everest for Nepal in the past. And it's just about a barely shortfall of 0.86 centimeters. Not that it's a huge amount that the differences happen. But if you see the Mount Everest, what they have currently found is that they've done a recalculation of the whole thing. Indians had used a triangulation method which comes from this instrument, right? And of course, excuse me, we physically also have to have people go to different places and keep taking these calculations, and then you bring it back and you put it down, and that's how we had mapped for Nepal, right? Mount Everest is not in India. The name of Mount Everest comes after the first officer who actually had gone up. His name was Everest. That's how we get that peak summit was made by him. Of course, with him there were 2 Sherpas. They never get mentioned so much. So this is the reality. So now what Nepal has done is they have used Bay of Bengal as the 0 level or the sea level, whereas China has also been calculating, because China did not want to put Mount Everest as the highest. They wanted to put a lower height for Mount Everest. So that was the fight between China and Nepal. And therefore, Nepal wanted it, of course, the highest, because if it gets highest, then it gets the recognition of the highest peak in the world. So therefore, China was wanting to put it down. And in that process, so they had also attempted a calculation. So now, almost after spending a huge sum of money, 2 countries have done a joint project to calculate the height of Mount Everest. So when they have calculated it, so Nepal has calculated it from the Bay of Bengal side, and China has calculated it with the base level of the Yellow Sea, because it's their sea, right? They can't accept what is Indian. So from these 2 calculations were made, multiple triangulation methods were done, instruments were used, plus people have gone up there. China has positioned equipment right up there to get them the remote sensing data as well. And based on all of this, currently, this is the data which has been put forward. However, some people have another reason why this calculation actually was needed was, if you remember some years back, there was an earthquake in Nepal. It was so severe, that earthquake, that a lot of things of Kathmandu had actually been affected. So the Chinese government and Nepalese government, they were given the opinion, or they were of the opinion, that the Mount Everest had actually reduced in height, because that earthquake had, in some of the cases, many mountains along the Himalayas had actually reduced in height because of that volcano, because of the jerking that had happened. So they wanted to calculate it because they were keen to find out whether even Mount Everest has reduced its height. Also, let me tell you, actually, if you go by the real calculation, there is a mountain in Peru which is supposed to be taller than Mount Everest, but somehow that does not get accepted. This is a more accepted reality. So, yeah, so they have calculated now, and this is the new modus that has come. Just as a data digression. So, from our, the first time that these kind of equipments being used, what we then went into was something called aerial photography. What is aerial photography? They put aeroplanes, and the cameras were fitted on the aeroplanes, and these kept on moving. As they were moving, they kept on capturing multiple data. All this multiple data was brought in together, and then you laid them down. There were special cameras that were fitted on those aircrafts, and the aircrafts had to fly at a certain height. And if you see this equipment here, this is called a stereoscope. The stereoscope, if you put this equipment on this and see, you can actually see the mountains in a 3D mode. Very, very old fashioned, right? Today, 3D images come with just a click of a button in your devices. So that's how it was. So that helped you to see, okay, this is a mountain, this is a valley, this is a, like you can see this, right? So these are the mountains, these are the cuts in the mountain, this is going to be the riverside or whatever water body that was there. So this is how we were introduced to studying photographs that were taken from a remote point. But this is not remote sensing, please. Subsequently, what happened is that we started realizing that the aircrafts were not able to fly everywhere. And we also realized that the kind or the density of images that was happening was not so accurate. There were problems, multiple shots were taken, and we were not able to assimilate so much of data. That is the time we started remote sensing. So remote sensing today again is very largely followed by most countries, where they are continuously capturing data for all over the world. So every country has its own. India has its IRS series, which is continuously computing data, or it's taking pictures, and it goes round and round along in an orbit, in an artificial satellite that is going around our orbit. Now these orbits are decided. There are different kinds of satellites. I'm sure you will be having some lecture on this someday, and you will understand there are some things called geostationary satellites, then there are PSLV satellites, etc. So all the satellites are created, the satellites are continuously clicking pictures, and that's the reason. Today, supposedly, there's a cyclone which is affecting you. You can just guide the satellites to that place, and that can give you very clear shots as to what is happening, when the cyclone will attack, what is the distance. There is a model in which we put the data, and we can find out what really happens. So the model is exactly something like this. So you position your satellite, you have a receiving station here, you will have the images created, and it is captured here. From here, it will be passed on to your absorbing station, or the receiving station as they are called. I also put for you here an image. This is exactly how they tend to look, and they use inverse colors. So the colors will also be explained to you, I guess, at a certain time. Now, just that as we were talking about so many new things, and we accept that we have gotten into geoinformatics and we're using geoinformatics, there's a lot of importance of that geoinformatics, but I just thought to just leave you with this, that why do you think we were needing this technology? Now, when you are talking about any technology, if you ever see the way the evolution happened, I put a slide after this as well. In India, I think we put this, our first IRS went in 1988, but before that, we used something from the Russian space station. You would have heard about Rakesh Sharma and him going into moon and trying to find out what India was looking like, and that's that famous statement he made to Indira Gandhi, "Sare jahan se acha." So technically speaking, we've also had space programs that have been encouraged, and I think the last one to Mars was a failure. But again, we are trying to reassemble, and we're going to be perhaps making a greater impact in future. Also to state here is that indigenously, India is now developing its own satellite versions, which is very appreciable considering where we are still far behind many of the international countries, particularly NASA or European Space Agency, ESA, etc. Even Russian is far better than us, Chinese is far better than us. So this is where we needed to get into geoinformatics. One thing was that in every sphere today, technology has been extensively used. So we had to use it even in our subject. If we did not, then we would not be able to understand many things in our subject. For example, Barish ho raha hai, you want to know how long the rain will last. You will need that data. Suppose there is going to be an earthquake, if you can warn somebody. So we need data all the time. We need to be prepared all the time. We need to understand the subject. And if every other area is getting assessed and analyzed with technology, why not us, right? Similarly, when you look at globalization, I put for you is today people are not studying small areas. Now look at that map which is there for in a tablet. It is just Babylon, chota sa Babylon. Today you cannot be a chota sa place. You have to be a big area. You have to understand the whole. So if I'm looking at India, the entire country at a go. How can you study a small area? So if you're studying a small area, I can send this man there and he can find out what is happening. But I cannot be using that when I'm studying a huge area, right? He'll be running from one side to the other. So bigger areas need bigger technology, bigger or better ways to collect the data. Next is themes. पहले क्या होता था, आपने सिर्फ टोपोग्राफी मैप कर दिया, आपने सिर्फ देख लिया कि कितनी बार बारिश यहाँ पे कितने देर से हुआ. You put out a beaker, you got the measurement, your rain gauge is full, you're happy. Today you want to know many things. With the rain, was the wind speed also high? You want to know, was it raining only in Mumbai or was it even raining in that place and raining in that place? Today you want to know, along with the rain, was the sun also shining? Was the sun days matching with that? Was the surface temperature this? Had the temperature fallen? आप एक एक करके themes बढ़ाते जा रहे हो. जितने आपने themes बढ़ाए, उतना आपको data चाहिए. When it becomes that, sometimes it is beyond the human domain to calculate so much data in a nick of a time. So who will do it? Obviously your computers can do it. So multivariate themes के लिए हमें इसकी जरूरत थी. And the last one is बहुत precision has become very important. I don't want to know, wrong data. I don't want to know wrong things. So a very simple thing, when there is an election, you sit down to find out, who is going to win when the data is getting collected, right? When the collection is going on. At that time, if there is one channel which is giving you almost the correct and the accurate one of what is the actual number, and their past databases are matching, you will want to listen to that place. So we all want accurate, precise data. We all want to be better prepared for anything like a disaster. If you know that a cyclone is coming, you tell me beforehand, no, give me 48 hours warning, let me exit that place and go. Those are the kind of things that we are looking for. So if you need that thing, we have to depend on all forms of technological usage. This was just a set of few quick facts for you. From the 60s, remote sensing and use of GIS has come in. Because World War, we needed all these big things, right? Data, firing and shelling and fighting and trench occupation and so many other things. So we were looking for quick data. So that's why it began around the 60s, and see, it's become so big today. It's hardly that many years, but you still have a major contribution that was done. However, so I will just review. It's just, I think, 5 more minutes. I will quickly tell you where are we headed now. Now, this will be more for people who are taking geography or looking at geography as a future as well. You've seen this. We've seen 2 paradigm changes in our subject. Where are we headed after this? After this, as I view it, these are again my imaginations. As I see it, I see more of other subjects coming into these subjects. So things as strange as mythological geography is important. So new things coming in, historical parts, so psychological parts, social parts, sociological parts, anthropological parts are all getting contained in the subject. Niche domains as the finer, small little domains that are coming up. I do see that in future there will be many more such small domains, and that will hold the key for many of you to take it up as a profession. Back to the classical geography always keeps happening. These are called counter currents. I just told you about the La Nina. Every time there is a fresh inbound of a new thing, some people still hold on to that old culture. And when everything passes, they go back to the old culture. So there will be a back to the culture movement, and the classical geography revives itself. More emphasis on social and human geography. People are moving from physical to human geography because physical has become mapped completely, and all alterations can be done through geoinformatics. You're not having to work on it all the time. What you can't map is how I am feeling today. Am I liking taking this class? That you can't map in your geoinformatics till I tell you. So that is why those areas will still stay with geography. And finally, more use of technology, such as, and I'm looking at drones coming in as a major data collection points. So with that, I shall close my class. Thank you very much. I shall stop sharing. Any question, I will take it. I know you might, some of you would appreciate that. Yes. Any questions, anything I can address? I don't think so, right? Anybody has a question? Anything you would like to add? Nothing. So thank you very much. We're on dot. Ashley, is it
Yes, ma'am.
fine? It's 50, 56, I think so.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. So anything else that we would like to take this? Ashley, anything from your side?
Ma'am, thank you. It was fun listening. I mean, it took us to the journey of geography to geoinformatics, and
Thank
probably it was something a great brush up that you did, the different terminologies as well as how geography evolved itself. It was sort of a brush up for me as well, and I'm pretty sure students have to enjoyed it. Now, any one of you would like to speak out something with ma'am? Geography, geoinformatics, IT students? Anyone? Can you unmute yourself and speak up quickly? Lekha? Yes. How was the session?
Ma'am, the session was very good. It was very interesting, and I learned many new things. And thank you so much for clearing many things. That's it.
Thank you, Lekha. Thank you for appreciating.
It was having you here.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, I think we are done.
Yeah. We both